No single player has as much pressure on them. Bjergsen makes one mistake, they instantly lose the game.
But here comes Bjergsen. Wow! Bjergsen evaporates. Wild Toto respawns, but that's going to be the game.
So I think the other players need to step up.
We have to adapt. It's not going to be easy.
I think we're playing at a good level and they're underperforming. I think that we can beat them if we play well. I definitely think that's going to be our toughest opponent throughout the whole split.
Hello and welcome to Week 4 of the North American League Championship Series Summer Split. We've got a packed house here in Los Angeles, and the fans, as you can see, are plenty fired up for another day of action here inside the studios. Just a moment ago, though, they were lined up and showing just as much hype and support for their favorite teams outside. Tip, as you see, arriving here at the studio, giving a big wave to the crowd. Impact following suit. They'll be facing off against Team Dignitas, and here's Kiwi Kid heading inside, cheerful as always. There's going to be a big matchup in the mid lane, though. Shifter getting in a quick cheap shot here on Xiao Zhao before the game even starts. Xiao Zhao escaping, which is 10 HP, but he'll get his chance for revenge in just a bit. Now, hello, everyone. I'm James Dash Patterson. We've got a special lineup here on the analyst desk, starting with our resident ne'er-do-well, Sam Kobe Hartman Kensler. And joining us to preview our game of the week, we have the coaches of Team Liquid and TSM, Peter and Locodoco. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me. We'll talk to these guys in just a second, but first, let's take a quick look at how the teams are stacked up. In first place, we have CLG and Team Liquid. Gravity, Team Dignitas, and TSM are one game back in third. Tip is in 6th place with an even 3 wins and 3 losses. Cloud9 and Enemy Esports are sharing 7th, followed by Team 8 and TDK. Now turning to today's schedule, we've got Team Dignitas starting our day as they face off against Team Impulse. After that, TDK will challenge frontrunner CLG. A little bit later, Gravity will battle Team 8, and we'll wrap up the day with Enemy Esports against Cloud9. Now sitting at the middle of our schedule is the game of the week. 2 of our heavyweight contenders for the top spot will battle it out with Team Liquid versus TSM. And as we mentioned, we've got the coaches of each team here to give us some insight into this match. So gentlemen, once again, thank you for joining me. I'm going to jump right into it, coming to you first, Peter. I got to talk to you last week about the improvements that your team has made and what it's going to take to continue this winning record for you guys. So what have you done specifically in this past week in preparation for this big game against TSM?
So basically, in my opinion, TSM is a really mid-focused team. They will pressure mid a lot with Last Boy, with Santorin. They love to gank mid. So first of all, I'm going to definitely do a good version for the mid side to protect my Phoenix. I don't want my Phoenix just got ripped by the random gank from like anywhere.
From the whole team.
Yeah,
yeah, really, anyone could show up in the mid lane there. Now over to you, Loco. In some regard, TSM has had some stumbles so far this split, a couple losses that were not necessarily expected. What have you done in this past week to shore up the weaknesses going up against this 5-1 Team Liquid squad?
So most of our faults have been around mid-game, what we do with our lead and not being clean and ending the game, and our rotations. So we've really focused on our mid-game this week. Our analysts had multiple presentations, and we did a lot of drills in what we do with our lead. So we shored that up.
It's actually a pretty interesting point that you bring, because I was just watching the show that you guys have out on YouTube, and one thing that you guys were talking about was that the coaching staff want more control over what the players are going to have in their practice time and what champions they use and what you're preparing for the games. For a team that's so focused on the international play, do you think that, is there any chance that you guys will be held back as far as innovation? Because if you are just looking at what other teams are doing, then you won't have things like, Power of Evil bringing out mid lane Varus first for you guys when you do go to international events.
So we have very talented players, and they know their matchups really well, and they have some innovative ideas. So what we'll do is at the start of the week, we'll talk to them, and they'll tell us what champions they want to try versus, and I'll also have champions that I want to do and I want to put more practice into. So it's not just doing whatever the coaching staff says. At the beginning of the week, we take in player opinions, and throughout the week, we still take them in. Just during practice, there's no argument about what picks we're going to do. I have the final say.
So no back talk, but they still get their chance.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, both of you have been very outspoken about the infrastructure behind your organizations and the improvement in the coaching staff. You know, kind of along this line of champion pools, we've seen Echo introduced. We've seen big changes to Caitlyn, Jace, and Shen recently. Now, from a coach's perspective, how do you approach whether or not a champion should enter into one of your players' pool or into team strategy?
So basically for us is we're gonna be talking with the players, and the players usually can come to me and like, oh Peter, you know, this patch, this champion got buffed. And like I think this champion got buffed, he's probably gonna be very well in the competitive scene. So we're gonna let him play in the solo queue first to tell me, all right, so in the solo queue, you're gonna lane against a different opponent. And you can tell me, all right, maybe it's good against this champion. So when we're doing the scrim and we're thinking this champion will fit our team comp, then we're gonna use it. If it used well, then we're gonna play in the LCS.
Then, Loco, I'm going to slightly alter the question for you because you've talked about how the coaching staff is going to establish the champion pool that you work with. How would a player then come to you and change your mind about whether or not a champion should be added to that pool?
So anytime during the week, they can come up to me and they'll say, oh, I think Teemo's really good because of this and this and this. And then we'll have a discussion about Teemo, and then we'll design a team comp around it. And we'll play it once or maybe twice, depending on how well the game went. And then we'll make a final judgment call and then say, okay, we're going to start playing it more the day after, and then we'll make a call on it. Or if it's too late in the week, we'll say, okay, we'll learn to play around this champion, but we'll try more next week.
All right, well, moving away from, analyzing champions to analyzing teams, there's so much talk about, TSM, their strengths and the mid lane and all that. Peter, I want to ask you a different question, though. When looking at TSM, what do you think is their biggest weakness?
I think most of the people are going to say Dyrus, but I feel Dyrus is a very good player. I'll just tell you guys a little bit about one sentence in my scout report. We were talking, Dyrus is a player hard to gank, but easy to dive.
Okay.
I think their weakness is probably Santorin's point, because lots of the other players, they don't like to gank a lot. But like I said last week, I think Dom is one of the best jungler in the North America. If we can get the confident champion ourselves, I think Dom can just win the jungler.
Oh, yeah. In his AMA, I think he did say that he considered himself to be the best jungler in North America. Locodoco, what do you think about the jungle matchup?
I think Santorin's a really underrated player. In scrims, he does great. When Santorin first came into the scene, it was into like the really public guy. It was during IEM San Jose, and he didn't have a really good showing there. So his legacy started out really low, but I think a lot of people overlook how well Santorin played during the spring split, how well he played at IEM Katowice. And if you ask the junglers in NA that scrim with us a lot, they'll only have good things to say about Santorin. So I don't think Dom's going to beat Santorin at all. I think Santorin will really show up.
Well, it's definitely going to be an exciting matchup. I do want to move to another player, which would be Piglet. Peter, last time this split, about this same time, a few weeks in, there was a lot of disharmony around Piglet and how he meshed with the team. A few months later, everything seems to be running very smoothly. So what do you attribute his assimilation into the team mostly to?
Well, first, when Piglet comes to team, the language barrier is really a big issue for our team, because Piglet almost didn't know any English that time. Like, we need to teach him, use our NS to teach him English, one by one, like knowing the words, like red buff, blue buff, like what do we want to do in the game, back out, or should go in stuff. And as long as he played more solo queue in North America, and he learned more English from solo queue, like he knowing how to communicate with the team, to use the pings, or just say some simple words. So now he can actually do a very simple communicate with Dom, with X Special, so they have more synergy from that.
All right, lastly, I want to follow up with, there's been a lot of criticisms towards the North American region for not being as strong as it used to be, mostly attributed to the fact that C9 has fallen from grace a little bit. TSM has found some stumbles. I want to get your guys' perspective, just as coaches, as to where you feel the North American region rests in relation to the rest of the world.
So last split, a lot of people had negative things to say about EU, how it looked really shaky. And I honestly don't think you can judge scenes that well until you put them against each other. So maybe NA is the farthest behind, but we're so much far away from Worlds. We have a lot of space to improve. And I think our teams are doing fine. I think Team Liquid is doing fine. I think TSM, we're doing fine. And it's regular season, so CLG is doing fine. Gravity also showed up.
The caveat.
I love that. That's great.
And C9, even though they're not doing that well, like they always show up when it matters. So I mean, right now, NA does look pretty murky, and we don't look that great, but I don't think it even matters. Like, who cares? We're, what, 4 months away from Worlds, 3 months away from Worlds? Like, we're so far away. So right now, maybe we're the weakest, but I don't think it really matters in the overall scope of things.
All right, well, great to hear, gentlemen. Once again, I want to thank you for joining us here on the desk. Wish both of your teams the best of luck in your game later today. Now, sticking to the subject of coaches, we want to ask all of you at home which coach in the NALCS has the toughest job and why. Send your bite-sized 140-character responses to @LOLesports and use the hashtag LCS. Then stay tuned to see if we read your tweet a little later in the broadcast. But now we're going to send things over to our dynamic casting duo to get us into the action.